Ethan Cole was an ordinary young man who liked quiet evenings, video games, and coffee that was far too strong. He shared his small apartment near the university with books, wires, and half-finished gadgets. Life was normal until the exchange program started between Earth and another world. Everyone talked about it with a mix of fear and curiosity. Some said it was going to bring peace and learning. Others said it might bring trouble. Ethan signed up because he thought it sounded like a small adventure in an otherwise quiet life. He'd never expected his new roommate would change everything he believed about people, peace, and the future. When his new roommate arrived, Ethan felt nervous. He had cleaned the apartment as best he could, though a few wires and old projects still lay around like sleeping pets. The visitor stepped through the door, small and graceful, eyes wide open, as if seeing Earth air for the first time. Her name was Lyra, and although she came from a faraway world, she looked nearly human. She smiled shyly when she saw him, holding a round translation device that glowed in her hand. Her voice was calm and soft when she said, "Hello, I am happy to meet you." The translator repeated her words in English, slightly delayed but clear. Ethan smiled back. "Hi, I'm Ethan. Welcome to Earth." He felt foolish after saying it, as if he had just announced the name of the planet to someone who already knew where she was. Lyra only nodded, her eyes scanning every corner of the room, as though the plain furniture held deep secrets. She touched the light switch, and when the lamp turned on, she gasped in delight. "It listens to you," she said seriously. Ethan laughed. "Not really. It only listens to fingers." From that moment, their strange friendship began. Ethan discovered that every small thing on Earth was new to her. The humming refrigerator, the smell of fresh toast, even the barking of dogs outside the window filled her with wonder. She asked dozens of questions in a single hour, each one more curious than the last. She wanted to know why humans laughed when embarrassed, why they closed their eyes when happy, and why they kept photographs of other people on their walls. Sometimes Ethan tried to explain, but often the answers sounded silly once spoken. He simply said, "That's just what we do," and she would smile as if the phrase itself was poetry. At night, she stood by the window watching the city lights below. She said the patterns looked like stars that had fallen to the ground and were trying to climb back to the sky. Ethan liked the way her thoughts made ordinary things sound beautiful. He realized she saw the world with the excitement of a child and the patience of someone very old. Living together was not always easy. Lyra did not understand many human habits. Once she poured dish soap into the laundry machine, and the entire bathroom filled with bubbles. Ethan ran in, slipped, and landed on the floor while laughing. Lyra looked at him, confused, worried that she had done something unforgivable. When he kept laughing, she finally laughed too, though she was not sure why. Their laughter echoed through the small apartment, making the mishap feel like a victory instead of a mistake. Lyra often shared small stories about her people, but never used their names. She said they lived in cities of quiet light where even the air shimmered with thought. They used images instead of words for deep talks, and their songs could make gardens bloom. Ethan listened, fascinated but sometimes lost in the details. He tried to imagine such places but ended up picturing glowing gardens that looked suspiciously like Christmas decorations. Ethan introduced her to pizza, movies, and late-night walks by the river. She introduced him to calm silence, to listening fully before speaking, and to noticing small things like the warmth of sunlight on glass or the way rain bends light. Slowly, they found balance. He showed her the strength in human laughter, and she showed him that stillness could hold more meaning than sound. It surprised Ethan how much he enjoyed explaining human life. He taught her about birthdays, jokes, and coffee breaks. She tried coffee once and made a strange face. "It tastes like burnt water," she said. He grinned and replied, "That means you got the good stuff." Days turned to weeks, and their friendship grew. Whenever Ethan looked at her, he saw someone both fragile and strong, as if she was made of light and courage together. Lyra said, "Once, you humans are odd. You fall down, you laugh, then you try again. On my world we do not fall. But maybe we should." Ethan thought about that long after she said it. He realized that maybe humans were not perfect, but their imperfection made them interesting. Each day brought a new confusion, a new laugh, and a new story between them. Neither of them guessed that one small accident waiting in the future would someday carry the power too. change both their worlds forever. One warm morning, sunlight poured through the thin curtains of the small apartment. Ethan was awake early, fixing one of his projects at the big wooden desk in his room. He wore headphones, lost in the buzzing hum of wires and the gentle rhythm of music. Outside his door, his roommate walked quietly through the hallway, carrying a cup of tea and humming softly, fascinated by how the steam curled in the air like a dancing ghost. She had been learning more about Earth every day. She liked how human homes smelled different each morning, sometimes like bread, sometimes like sleep. She liked how humans greeted the day with noise and movement. On her world, mornings were silent, full of calm. She was still trying to understand why Earth felt so alive, even before the sun had fully risen. The apartment door to Ethan's room was not locked. She thought he might be awake, so she pushed it open without thinking. She wanted to ask about the small machine on the table in the kitchen. Its spinning lights reminded her of the floating seeds that carried sound at home. But the moment she stepped in, time seemed to stop. Ethan had just finished his shower. He was standing near his bed, his hair still damp, his chest bare, a shirt half in his hands. For a brief second, both of them froze, eyes wide with surprise. His face turned red, hers turned pale with confusion. The cup of tea in her hands shook, and a small drop spilled onto the floor. Ethan pulled the shirt over his head so quickly that he almost tripped. "Oh no, sorry, I didn't know you'd come in," he exclaimed in a rush of words. She blinked, trying to understand what had just happened. It was not that she had never seen the form of a human before, but in her culture, seeing someone without the proper coverings even by accident was an act that carried deep personal meaning. It was reserved for moments of truth, when pretending ended and only honesty remained. For a few seconds, she stood still, her blue eyes wide, breathing shallow. Her heart felt like it had been struck with a strange kind of lightning. She looked at him again, not with shame this time, but with wonder. What she saw was something very human, something she had never seen before on her world in perfection that did not hide. A person simply being himself. Ethan, still confused and embarrassed, tried to fill the silence. I'm sorry. I should have locked the door. I didn't think." She lifted her hand gently. "No, please. It is I who should say sorry. I did not knock." Her voice trembled slightly. The translator on her wrist repeated the words in a calm tone, but the meaning behind them was heavy. Ethan gave a small, nervous laugh. "It's fine, really. It's just a mistake. No harm done." He hoped that would end the awkwardness, but she did not move. Her gaze softened. "Ethan, may I say something strange?" He looked confused, but nodded. "You do not hide your true self, even when surprised," she said quietly. "On my world, we train from childhood to control every movement, every word, every breath. But you just are. It is different. It is very honest." Ethan rubbed his neck, unsure how to respond. "I guess humans are good at being awkward," he said finally, smiling faintly. She tilted her head, watching him as if he had just shared an ancient truth. Then, suddenly she laughed. It was not a small laugh, but a bright, musical sound that filled the room like sunlight. It startled him at first, then made him laugh too. The moment that had begun as pure embarrassment became something warm and alive. The tension melted away. They laughed until their faces hurt, until the translator blinked uncertainly, trying to keep up. When at last they stopped, she wiped a tear from her eye. "Your world is strange," she said, still smiling softly. "You make accidents feel beautiful." He grinned, a little bashful. "We're good at turning disasters into stories." After that morning, something changed between them. The air carried a new understanding, fragile yet strong, like the thin thread of light at sunrise. Whenever they spoke, she watched him differently, not just as a guide to human customs, but as a symbol of something her people had forgotten, the courage to be real. Ethan didn't think much about it afterward. He thought it was only a funny story he would someday tell. The time his roommate walked in on him. But for her, that one small moment of honesty stayed bright in her heart. It became a spark, something bigger than embarrassment or curiosity. She had seen more than just a person. She had seen the meaning of humanity itself, and polished, forgiving, and true. Outside, the morning grew stronger. Sounds of the city floated through the window. Cars, laughter, distant music. Life on Earth moved as it always did. unaware that a single accident inside one small apartment had already begun to shift the future ever so slightly. The sun had set, and the small apartment was filled with the soft light of the city. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, turning a screwdriver in his hand, while his mind wandered back to the strange moment that had happened a few days before. He could not forget the way his roommate had looked at him that morning, not with judgment, but with a kind of wonder that made him uncomfortable and curious at the same time. Thought maybe she had already forgotten, but he was wrong. She had not forgotten. That morning had changed something inside her. She had seen truth in the most human of ways, and it followed her through every day since. She began to ask more questions about human life, not just about food or machines, but about feelings. She wanted to understand what made people laugh when they were hurt or cry when they were happy. She wanted to know why humans hugged instead of bowing, why they told stories about heroes who lost everything but kept smiling. One night she found Ethan quietly fixing his drone again, small lights blinking across his desk. She asked, "Why do humans create so much? Even when something is already finished, you build again." He looked up from his tools and smiled. "'Cause it's fun to make things better," he said. Then he added, "and because we get bored easily." She laughed softly. "On my world, we stop when we succeed. You keep moving even after success. You chase the feeling more than the thing." Ethan thought about that. Maybe, but that's what makes us human, I guess. We're always chasing something. From that night, she began writing messages to the cultural group from her world. She told them about her experiences on Earth. She did not describe the accident itself, only what it showed her that humans had a kind of bravery that was different from power. It was the bravery of imperfection. She explained that humans were not afraid to make mistakes in front of each other, and had the strange habit of forgiving easily. The messages traveled across great distances through their communication network. On the other side, leaders and scholars read her words carefully. Many of them were surprised. It always studied humans as emotional but reckless, creative but chaotic. Her words were different. She said human emotion was not weakness, but its own kind of strength. For the first time, they began to wonder if Earth's ways held wisdom they had overlooked. At home, Ethan's life continued in its usual messy rhythm. He had no idea that her simple reports were gaining attention in far and serious places. He still saw her as his curious roommate who tried to make pancakes and created disasters in the kitchen almost every morning. One afternoon, while he was working on a broken camera, she sat across from him and watched him think. "Ethan," she said softly, "when someone on your world makes a mistake, why do the others laugh instead of turning away?" He shrugged. "Because it helps. Laughter means it's okay. It reminds us that being human is already a mistake, in a funny way, and none of us are perfect. It makes the fall less painful." Her eyes glowed with understanding. "Maybe that is why your world is still alive after all the wars and storms. You know how to laugh after falling." Ethan chuckled. "That's one way to put it." Later that week, she received a message from her council, asking her to share her thoughts at a meeting. They wanted her opinion on whether deeper friendship with Earth was worthwhile. The request shocked her. She had not planned to become a speaker or a teacher. She had simply written what she saw and felt. But now she understood that her accident in the apartment had shown her something important, an idea strong enough to cross between worlds. The night before she left for the meeting, she and Ethan sat on the apartment balcony. The air smelled of rain and street food from the corner shop below. The city lights blinked like slow-moving stars. "Are you nervous?" Ethan asked. "A little," she said. "I do not know if they will listen." "They will," he said gently. "Just tell them what's true." She turned to look at him. "And what is true?" He smiled. "The people are messy and loud and honest, and that's exactly what makes them amazing." She nodded, storing the words in her heart. When morning came, she left for the embassy to speak before the council. She wore simple clothes. The ones Ethan had said made her look like herself. Her hands shook slightly as she stood before the tall screens and explaining eyes of her people far away. She told them how humans lived with open faces and open emotions. She told them how kindness could grow out of accidents and how laughter could heal fear. She spoke of mistakes as bridges, not barriers. When she finished, there was silence. Then one of the council members said softly, "Perhaps there is more to these humans than we imagined." Across the stars, the message traveled between leaders, soldiers, and thinkers. Small sparks of respect began to light up between both worlds. And in the little apartment on Earth, Ethan poured himself another cup of coffee. Completely unaware, that one small awkward morning had started the slow turning of history. The following months passed with quiet storms brewing between the two worlds. Far away beyond the skies, leaders argued over land and space that both sides wished to claim. They called it a simple misunderstanding, but soon ships began to move toward each other, and communication turned cold. People on Earth grew worried. Everyone talked about the uneasy silence coming from the other side. News screens showed pictures of fleets getting ready. Even Ethan noticed the change when his roommate's messages became shorter and heavier. She sat by the window one night, her face calm, but her hands trembling slightly. "Ethan," she said after a long silence, "I think our peace may break soon." He looked up from his table where he had been trying to fix a broken radio. "What do you mean?" "There is talk of ending the friendship," she said quietly. "Some say humans act too wild, that your kind might bring danger. Others think my people are too proud. They're forgetting what we learned here." Ethan frowned. "That's not good." "After all this time," she nodded. "They claim both sides cannot be trusted." For a moment, the room fell silent, except for the hum of the city outside. Then Ethan smiled a little. "You'll remind them, right? We've already shown them that we're not so bad." She gave a weak smile. "I will try. The council is sending me to their meeting again. They said a human will also attend." Ethan did not know who it was at first. When the message came, his heart almost stopped. His name was on it. He had been chosen to represent Earth beside Queen Eleanor, the strong and graceful leader known for her calm voice. He could not believe it. He was an engineer, not a diplomat. When the day arrived, he found himself standing in the great hall of the city, dressed in a borrowed suit that was a little too big. The air smelled like new metal and flowers from distant gardens. Across from him stood his roommate, wearing the calm expression he had learned meant she was nervous. She met his eyes and smiled softly. "We will do this together." At the end of the hall, Queen Eleanor stood on a raised platform. She was tall and carried herself with quiet power. Her simple gown caught the light like soft water. When she spoke, her voice filled the room without needing to be loud. "Today we are here not to speak of victory or fear," she said, "but of truth." The ambassadors from both worlds sat opposite each other, their faces cold and full of suspicion. Charts of the disputed area floated in the air between them. Voices rose, blaming each other for broken promises. Ethan sat still, wishing someone would just listen. Then, without planning it, he stood up. His heart pounded. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Can I tell a story?" The room went quiet. All eyes turned to him. Queen Eleanor smiled faintly and nodded for him to go on. He took a deep breath. "My name's Ethan. I am not a politician or a soldier. I'm just someone who lives with one of your people. Share a small apartment. We cook badly, laugh too much, and sometimes misunderstand each other. One time something awkward happened between us. I thought it was terrible, but it turned out to be something good. It showed how different we are and how similar too. We make mistakes, we smile, we forgive. That's what being human means. Maybe. That's what being alive means for all of us." His words hung in the silence like light rain. Then his roommate stood slowly beside him. Her voice was calm but strong. "What he says is true. I saw his people through mistakes, and I learned that kindness often hides behind clumsiness. You see, when they fall, they laugh, and that laughter carries truth stronger than any law. It made me see that we must not build peace on fear, but on courage to be open." Queen Eleanor stepped forward, her eyes bright with quiet pride. "You have both spoken well," she said. "Peace is not kept by perfect people, but by honest ones. Let us not forget that." Whispers spread through the hall. People looked at each other differently, as though something invisible had shifted. The charts in the air now seemed like toys compared to the truth freshly spoken. Slowly, one by one, the leaders began lowering their voices. Discussions grew softer, warmer. Finally, the first agreement was signed. The fleets waiting near the dark edges of space were ordered to stand down. After the meeting, the Queen walked toward Ethan and his roommate. "You did what trained diplomats could not," she said kindly, and reminded us what it means to be human. She looked at them as if they were her own kin, then turned to the watching crowd and announced, "Let this meeting mark the start of a treaty of trust, not one of fear." Outside, lights glowed across the skyline. Crowds cheered as the news spread that peace had been restored. Ethan watched the glow from the balcony later that night, his heart light and his mind full of disbelief. Beside him, his roommate whispered, "See, even mistakes can rewrite the stars." He laughed softly. "Yeah," he said, "and sometimes it starts in the smallest apartment in the world." The night breeze carried distant singing from the streets below. It mixed with the hum of engines above the clouds, and both worlds breathed easier for the first time in years. The days after the peace meeting felt lighter than before. The city shone brighter, as if it understood that calm had finally returned. News spread across the world that the two sides had agreed to build together instead of fight. On television, people smiled and waved flags. Strangers who had once spoken only in fear now greeted each other with warmth. It felt like a new beginning, soft yet strong. Ethan watched it all from his small apartment, the same place where his story had quietly begun. He found it strange that people now called him a symbol of unity. Porters wanted to talk to him and students wanted to take pictures with him. Yet inside, he still felt like the same simple young man who liked quiet mornings and late-night machines. He often joked that his world had changed only because he forgot to lock his door one day. His friends laughed, but a part of him knew this was not far from the truth. His roommate stayed with him a few weeks longer before returning to her home world. They sat together on the balcony many nights, watching the lines of light in the sky where transport ships crossed between planets. The air was full of promise. One evening she said, "It is strange, Ethan. I came here to learn, but I think I have learned something no book could ever teach." "What's that?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. She smiled. "That peace is not built by treaties or orders. It is built by friendship, one heart at a time." He nodded slowly, thinking of how simple and true those words sounded. The city lights flickered below them like fireflies. For the first time in a long while, the world seemed quiet in a good way. When the day came for her to leave, Ethan helped her carry her things to the station. People gathered around to send her off. Everyone smiled and thanked her for what she had done. She looked at Ethan and said, almost whispering, "You know, your laughter saved more people than you may ever know." He laughed softly. "I'll take that as a superpower," he said. She laughed with him, and in that moment, they both understood that even though their time together was ending, the story they had begun would never really stop. Years passed. The story of that small apartment spread far across both worlds. It became part of songs, part of stories parents told their children. People spoke about how a simple act of honesty had changed the path of history, yet few remembered the details. To most, it was a tale about courage, kindness, and to friends who reminded everyone that peace often starts from small accidents. Ethan grew older, but never lost his simple laugh. He became an advisor for young engineers who were working on shared projects between the two worlds. He often told them machines can connect places, but hearts connect people. They would smile and nod, though some were too young to understand what he truly meant. One evening, long after his roommate had gone back to her world, he received a message. The screen blinked softly before her image appeared. She looked a little older, her eyes wiser, but still bright. "Ethan," she said gently, "I thought you should know. A new generation on my world has begun to study your people's ways. They are learning about joy, forgiveness, and friendship. We even teach them the word laughter, though it sounds different when we speak it." He smiled. "I'm glad. Just don't forget that laughter works better when it's true. It always will," she said. "And your queen visited us last year. She said, your words during the meeting still guide many decisions." "You would be proud," Ethan chuckled softly. "I'm already proud. We did something big, didn't we?" She nodded. "Yes, but maybe the best part is that we did it without meaning to." The connection ended after a while, leaving him sitting quietly with his thoughts. Through the window, he could see the night sky filled with light trails from ships traveling between the two planets. They looked like threads weaving a grand tapestry across the darkness. It made him think of how life connected everything in small, invisible ways. Many years later, children would read about a boy and a girl who had once shared an apartment and accidentally changed history. They would learn that peace could begin anywhere, even in a room full of laughter and mistakes. Teachers would ask what lesson the story taught, and students would answer that it showed how being human meant being brave enough to care. In the end, Ethan spent his evenings, much like before at his desk, fixing small things, building new ideas with calm hands. He did not seek fame or reward. He worked quietly, knowing that the laughter they created still echoed between the stars. And somewhere far away, the girl would sometimes look toward Earth and smile, remembering the moment that had changed both their worlds. It had begun with a misunderstanding, grown into friendship, and ended in peace. She always believed that the universe listened to small moments. Ethan believed it too. Neither of them ever forgot the truth they had shared, that the power of being human could light even the darkest sky with hope.